This huge container ship has just arrived in the port of Le Havre from the Caribbean. Le Havre is the busiest container port in France, a major hub for world trade. To deal with the ever-growing volume of shipping, the first phase of a huge port expansion has just been completed. The first 6 berths of Port 2000 cost more than €1 billion. Now the giants of the world's container fleet can dock here. The port of Le Havre is situated at the mouth of the River Seine, and the Seine estuary is also an exceptional area of natural beauty, with its water meadows, reed beds and mud flats, all home to a wide variety of rare plant and animal life.
On est dans un estuaire, donc on est vraiment à l'interface entre des milieux d'eau douce et des milieux d'eau salée. Donc toute la combinaison de ces deux facteurs fait qu'on a une diversité de milieux très importante. Et donc à ça s'associe forcément une diversité en espèces.
There was no doubt that such a huge port expansion was going to have a dramatic impact on the environment, not least the destruction of important breeding and resting areas for birds, but also damage to biodiversity, the whole natural system.
Dès le démarrage de l'opération Port 2000, nous sommes très rapidement rendus compte qu'il était indispensable d'associer tous les autres groupes qui vivaient ou qui avaient un intérêt dans l'estuaire, de façon petit à petit et tous ensemble à bien définir quels étaient les enjeux importants dans l'estuaire.
In a period of just 4 months, the port organised more than 40 public meetings, and a remarkable working relationship developed with environmentalists. €46 million was set aside, and plans agreed for a number of schemes to compensate for the environmental damage the port expansion was going to cause.
Je pense que très vite, il y a à la fois un langage commun qui s'est mis en place, et surtout l'autre élément important, c'est que nous avons mieux compris les enjeux pour tous les autres utilisateurs de l'estuaire, et les associations environnementales, les pêcheurs, ont par exemple aussi beaucoup mieux compris quels étaient nos enjeux à nous en titre de développement portuaire.
Before any work on the port began, the environmental projects were launched. A small island was constructed as a new resting place for seabirds in the south of the estuary. 500,000 tons of gravel were shipped over to build the bean-shaped island. And a second bird resting area was created in the sand dunes on the shore to replace a zone being taken over by the new port. Environmentalists took a careful inventory of marine plant and bird species. Important species such as sea kale, protected plants in France, were moved from the area to be developed and replanted on a newly created ecological beach. Rather bleak-looking shingle in the shadow of petrol storage tanks, but rich in microscopic creatures to feed seabirds, and where no human is allowed to set foot.
Pour l'instant, on est au tout des débuts, parce que le conservatoire a fait des transplantations au niveau des racines, des graines et puis des plants. Il faut laisser un petit peu du temps à la nature de se mettre en place et puis à la plage de pouvoir retrouver un certain profil dit naturel.
The port of Le Havre spent €23 million on a huge project to restore the mudflats in the Seine estuary upstream from the port. Mudflats are a vital part of the ecosystem, home to plankton and algae, all food for fish and birds. A complex engineering plan altered river levels and currents to keep water flowing onto the mud and to keep the living system alive. Now the whole of the surrounding estuary has been given protected status as part of the EU's Natura 2000 network. The success of the partnership with the port surprised everyone.
On a vraiment été associés depuis le début. Donc le travail qui a été mené avec le port autonome du Havre a été vraiment enrichissant, et donc je pense qu'aujourd'hui ils ont fait de gros efforts par rapport à leur logique, par rapport à la préservation des milieux et des espèces.
Once the environmental measures were well underway, the massive construction work on the port could begin. In the past, too few industrial developments in Europe have given sufficient consideration to the environment, and particularly the impact on nature and biodiversity. The loss of one species can lead to the loss of another. There's a human cause and a human effect.
The population of the planet is now at its highest level ever. We're now 6.5 billion people. And those 6.5 billion people are squeezing out nature. Let's put it as simply as that.
The roll call of damage to Europe's biodiversity is astounding. 42% of native mammals are threatened with extinction, 45% of butterflies, 45% of reptiles, 30% of amphibians, 52% of freshwater fish. Most marine fish stocks are below safe biological limits. In 2001 in Gothenburg, Europe's heads of government pledged to halt the decline of biodiversity by 2010. But on current progress, there's a risk that might not be met.
But if we continue losing out at the rate by which we are losing biodiversity, we are going to lose out on our future and that of the planet and the future generations. We need to take measures immediately and in a determined way.
The EU already has a raft of legislation on air and water, birds and habitats directives. Conserving biodiversity is already integrated into a large number of policies, including the Lisbon Growth Strategy. But the European Commission is now launching a new action plan to 2010 and beyond, which sets targets to underline the urgency of the situation and the need for closer partnerships with national governments. The first priority, safeguarding the EU's most important habitats and species by making the Natura 2000 protection network fully operational by 2010 and extending the network to the marine environment by 2012. Priority number 2 looks at supporting biodiversity worldwide. For instance, halting imports of wood products which encourage deforestation. The aim, to significantly reduce the impact of EU trade on the ecosystem by 2010. The third priority sets a target of 2013 to limit the impact of global warming on biodiversity. Protection of the ecosystem can help limit greenhouse gas concentrations as forests and peatlands store carbon. And the final priority is all about boosting research to achieve greater understanding of biodiversity in the ecosystem by 2013. All experts know disregarding biodiversity has a high price. This is not just about saving beautiful countryside. Biodiversity is the basis of much of our economy and livelihoods.
If you take the collapse of the fisheries off the Grand Banks of Canada, eastern Canada, thousands and thousands of jobs were lost because the fishing industry collapsed. Billions of dollars had to be put into those areas just to keep the communities in any way living. It's a very expensive operation to try and save when nature disappears and when whole industries collapse.
Back in Le Havre, the new Port 2000 expansion has been inaugurated. The EU contributed more than €50 million to the building of the port. Under its new action plan, the European Commission wants to ensure European funding only goes to projects like this, which also care for the environment. It's clear to everyone that this is the future.
La quasi-totalité des ports d'Europe sont à un moment ou à un autre venus au Havre pour mieux voir notre démarche, comprendre notre démarche. Il est certain que tout projet d'une certaine envergure et tout projet dans un milieu sensible, et je pense que maintenant c'est le cas de pratiquement tous les projets en Europe, doit nécessairement prendre en compte son insertion environnementale et prendre en compte cette insertion dès le tout début du projet.
The success of the cooperation in Le Havre demonstrates that economic and environmental prosperity can go hand in hand to safeguard Europe's biodiversity and everyone's future.